and they have a housing bubble that's about to collapse. China's got, as they say in French, beaucoup problems. And so I don't think they're going to be doing anything assertive unless they're forced to. And I think a lot depends as to what China does on whether Iran is invaded and whether there's another war in the Middle East, because they have a pact, a treaty, with Iran that they will come to their aid in the event of an attack, just like Russia has. So as you can see, any war with Iran by the United States and Israel would draw many other players into the game, and we could have a world war, and it would not be very nice, I'll tell you. And I think that's where this is all headed. But China's got serious domestic problems.
Including their housing market dropping like a rock. Mr. Chapman, let's see, do we have time? I don't know if we've got enough time, but I'll bring this to you, and you can think about it through the break. Senator Morris is predicting a financial meltdown of the nation because of excessive debt. And just recently, Republican from New Hampshire, Senator Gregg, G-R-E-G-G, stated that the United States is on a course of economic disaster. And as we go off to break, Mr. Chapman, think the question will be coming when we come back will be, how do you feel about Senator Gregg and Senator Morris's statements that they're warning their constituents to prepare? And this is something, on my personal viewpoint, this is something you've been saying and I've been saying on this show for 5 years, and specifically you, 3 years ago, you specifically said that in the latter part of 2010, the market would collapse and go down and possibly go to as little as 3,000. I see this coming as a real estate broker here in Arkansas. Houses are going, house values are going down, and people are moving out of the retail stores and the malls. But what I noticed yesterday, Mr. Chapman, here locally, I've noticed a lot of standalone businesses, big businesses, have vacated their business and closed their doors without a warning. Now, we got to go to a break, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm here with Mr. Bob Chapman, the editor of The International Forecaster. He's the most plagiarized individual I've ever seen in my life, and especially in the form of what he knows about the economy and the money. We'll be back in 5.5 minutes with Mr. Bob Chapman. The 3 W's, theinternationalforecaster.com. We have the man live with us today with his insightful information, and he's about to answer a question about 2 senators in reference to their view that a financial meltdown of our nation is coming because of excessive debt, and how you are prepared and what you are prepared for. So, Mr. Chapman, your answer to the Marine here asking about Senator Judd Gregg of New Hampshire, who also stated that the United States is on a collision course with an economic disaster and the overwhelming debt, which is about to explode. What is your feelings about their statements?
Well, I think they're both correct, and the way to solve that is to cut government expenditures by 1/3 and lower taxes, not increase them. And then you would have a revival, and then people in business would say, well, gee, they're not going to raise our taxes next year, and we know where things are going. So we're sitting on, almost a couple of $1 trillion here in the United States. So we'll start spending some of it. We'll hire some people, and we'll invest in our business. We'll expand because we know where we're going now. And at the same time, banks will say, well, sure, we got piles of bad loans, but we got piles of money too. So let's start lending to the small and medium-sized companies so that they can start doing the right thing in hiring and expanding. But, that's not what Washington and the powers behind government are after. What they want is world government, and they're deliberately destroying the economy. And these senators know that. They're not dumb. And so that's the way we're headed. And the solutions are there. They're very simple. I mean, you don't have to be a genius to figure them out. And sure, we'll have 35% unemployment. But it won't last long if we follow the formula. Because people will start hiring again, and all those people who are working for the government who get laid off and others will have jobs. And part of cleaning up that mess will be we're going to have to do something about the illegal aliens in the country and their status. I mean, they're either going to legalize them or make them go home. And under the economic circumstances we're in and facing, they should be told that they should go home. And that's not going to happen under the present administration, that's for sure. That's why I keep on telling you people, at the next election, with minor exception, kick everybody out of Congress. Almost all of them are paid off.
I concur with that 1,000%. From the Australian chat room, the Big Bopper comes in and says, Mr. Chapman, people think austerity is going to solve the problem. I've heard this for a fortnight. What is your feelings on the austerity program?
Well, I think I just answered it, and I gave you a solution. Europe is going the wrong way. They're having austerity, and they raise taxes, particularly VAT taxes. And for Americans, they're called value-added taxes. They don't have them here yet in the United States, but that's what they are. And they shouldn't have done that in Europe. They should have left the VAT alone and cut 20, 30% of their expenses. But they didn't. They're not going to do that. They're going to cut. But their idea of austerity is not increasing the spending more than it is now. Well, that's not the answer. The answer is don't spend any more than you have spent, and what you're going to spend in the future should only be 2/3 of what you spent in the past couple of years. That's how you solve that problem. But don't raise taxes. Cut them. And that's what the U.S. should be doing, and they're light years away from that. What they're doing is they're going to have the Fed pour in $5 trillion over the next 2.5 years and create tremendous inflation, and they don't know what they're going to do after that. Maybe they're going to pull the plug and go into depression. I don't know, but it's not good.
Gregory from the Australian chat room comes in and says, Mr. Chapman, I've read several newspapers recently from the European line, and that they're touting that 23 countries are in debt, but one of the countries that aren't defaulting, these newspapers are saying they are about to default on their debt, is lacking, and that is the United States of America. Do you think that the United States of America is going to default on their debt? And if so, if you think that they aren't, what conclusions do you see that the United States could possibly get out of the massive debt that they have?
Well, I think they're going to default, but I think many other nations are too. And as I've said in the program before, I think they're going to have a meeting down the line here 6 months or a year from now. And at that meeting, they will try to use the SDR. Currencies will be devalued or revalued versus the SDR, depending upon their financial condition. And there will be a default among nations. They will come to conclusions who's going to pay whom what and who doesn't have to pay anything. And that's going to happen. And many, many nations are going to be affected, not just the United States, particularly Great Britain. They're in sad shape. And, of course, you all know about the pigs. But there's 20 nations, major nations, right now on the edge of collapse.
Mr. Chapman, here's a statement, and do you agree? Mr. Chairman, I think the British pound will be devalued against the U.S. dollar as payment from the Queen against the British pound damage. Do you agree? And if so, if not, can you explain?
Well, I would assume that you're referring to the damage caused by BP, maybe?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, devaluing the British currency versus the U.S. currency is not a solution. The solution is, first of all, anybody with any sense knows it was a false flag event. Who owns BP? Well, J.P. Morgan Chase, in behalf of the royal families of England and the Netherlands, as well as the Rothschilds, they own the majority of shares in that company.